Our organization has an annual malnutrition awareness week, which brings attention to the idea that feeding sick people is a good idea. We can all get behind that concept. And this is an organization-wide project, so it's really critical that in order to have the outcomes we want for patients around the world, we have to have every single staff member invested in the outcomes. So we do a lot of education for the staff about what it means to be involved in Malnutrition Awareness Week and why Aspen is the industry leader for this, this important week. So little things really help to break down the silos with such an event because the content is very clinical. So it would be very easy for only our clinical staff to care about this event. So one of the things that we do is send out emails, which is such a simple thing. We all email, probably too much, but anytime we have an organization that signs on with support, an email goes out immediately in celebration of that win. So every win, no matter how small or how large, gets celebrated. When one staff member calculated, who wasn't on this team, by the way, wasn't on the lead team for this event, one staff member calculated that our reach for last year's program was 600,000 clinicians around the world and primarily in the US. That was a huge, interesting fact that gives us a lot of power behind this effort. That was, of course, immediately shared with the whole staff. So little sharing with the whole staff and telling each individual team how they contribute, how they link back, has had a lot of benefit for us to get staff across the board, publications, marketing, everybody involved, because this is a part of our organization's mission. And if this type of event isn't successful, you won't have an organization that can support the staff as we know it. So these things are really important that staff don't see as somebody else's department. They have to view them, even if they're not touching it every minute, as a part of their work, as the reason for their job. It's so funny when I think about this, it's so natural, it's so ingrained in our culture to focus on this, that sometimes when people ask me, what do we do to break down silos, we function. That's, sort of, we live and breathe not having silos. And at the same time, once we stop paying attention to it, you have silos built back up. They just come back as quick as can be. One of the things that's been very successful is having different teams do presentations to the rest of the staff or a segment of the staff about their high priority items and what's next on their horizon, what are their pain points for the inside of the organization. And that's been very successful. So for example, at each staff meeting, which we have once a month, a different team member shares what they do, because of course we all know what we do. We know what our individual teams do. But do you know what the marketing manager does if you're in the education department? Try to help our team members highlight that. Again, crossing out silos as much as possible. The key with those are the discussion questions. So it's not just a presentation, but putting forth questions. Okay, here are our 3 strategic drivers for the organization. Where do you see yourself intersecting with this staff member now that you've heard what they have to say? What could you do differently to support this team member? Is this team member working on something that's interesting to you and is an area that you want to build skills in, even if it has nothing to do with your quote unquote job, which I say quote unquote because of course at any organization there's nothing that's not your job, so that doesn't really fly. Organizational culture is, I've used this analogy before, maybe it's a ridiculous one, but it's like the crust of the pizza. It matters what shape it is. It doesn't necessarily mean it won't be a good pizza. It matters what the values are that you put into it and how you treat those values and how you interact with them in order to get the organizational culture that you want and that you think will drive the best business results and best outcomes for your association and its stakeholders. That doesn't mean that your culture will look the same as my culture, will look the same as someone else's culture. But if you don't pay attention and design that culture carefully, make that pizza crust carefully, you're going to end up with a culture that might not be what you were looking for. So it happens, as a colleague of mine often says, culture happens by design or default, and you get to pick which one of the two it is. For me, I want to design the culture that works best for the organization and the people who work in it, volunteers, staff, and our stakeholders.